you always find yourself to where you're gonna have basically a problem if there is a problem. And certainly the governor thought that there was a problem with college athletes being a part of prop bets. Now, I know what everybody's going to say. They're trying to protect the athlete. They're trying to protect the athlete. And that's 100% what they are trying to do. But I think that they're doing something in a little bit of a different way than what you believe. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, please. But you believe of the mindset that if you allow people to bet on the college player, that they're going to get death threats or they're going to get something along those lines, and that's why they did it. Is that what why did they do it? Is that what you believe is why they cut off prop betting for college players?
I think the reasoning was when you're gambling on sports, any sport really ever, but specifically for collegiate athletes, if you bet on player X to score 10 points in a game and you have significant wagers on it, and you go to the bars after the game, after a tough loss, and your player didn't do it, that kid is more likely to receive some sort of crazy person yelling at him than there is to be a professional athlete. And I think they were doing it to protect the kid who's going to get yelled at the bars after the games. That's who I think this was in favor of. I think they were trying to do in some sort of half-assed way, trying to protect collegiate athletes.
I don't think that was the reason why.
Okay.
I think the reason why they did this, and certainly maybe we can try to do some digging, see if we can't perhaps bring somebody on to interview that was a part of this decision. And you know what? They might lie about why they actually did it. But I think it protects them from the standpoint that they don't have opportunities come their way that would be dishonorable to the game itself and also put the student athlete in danger as a whole. What I mean by that is some type of point shaving, and by point shaving I mean just straight conspiracy of going to the kid themselves and saying, hey, you have this prop bet, you can't hit it. If you sabotage it on purpose, you get X amount of dollars. Because that seems to be way more realistic and likely of being a possibility than them trying to protect the student athlete from getting hate mail. Because they're getting hate mail, by the way. They're getting hate mail more than likely because they lost the game, just in general.
Correct.
Or they get hate mail because they missed the kick to lose the game. Somehow, some way, you're not going to protect idiots from being able to be idiots. So the only thing I could think of was maybe, just maybe, that there's this scenario or there's this concern that college kids are prone to not having a significant amount of money. You're not going to be able to do this to Kevin Durant. Good luck going to Kevin Durant and telling him, hey, you can't score 35 tonight because I'm gonna slide you $100,000. Now, certainly, depending on how terrible your morals are, you could make the argument that's still possible. But my point is that it's a lot more opportunistic if you go to a broke college kid and you offer them some money to basically sabotage their what would it be, their prop bet.
Here's the statement from Mike DeWine. 1 year into sports betting in Ohio, we have seen a marketplace develop where a number of bad actors have engaged in unacceptable behavior by making threats against student athletes in Ohio and across the country. By amending rules to focus bets on the team and away from individual athletes, I believe we can improve the marketplace in Ohio and better protect student athletes from unnecessary and potential harmful threats. So it was, I mean, it's the Ohio Casino Control Commission has decided to prohibit player-specific props because of harassment of individual players. That is the official tagline they are giving. That's their main reason. You could be right too, but I'm going to say this is the reason that they're giving everybody else. And if this is the case, then why are we allowing gambling on any college sports ever? And I tweeted this out after the news came out, I think Friday night. But if I'm betting on, let's say, Ohio State, let's say UC, let's say I'm betting on UC basketball, and I need UC to win. Victor Locken misses a layup.
Why'd you pick on him?
Victor Locken misses a layup.
Use someone different.
And I start tweeting out Victor Locken, all kinds of hate towards Victor Locken.
He doesn't deserve this.
Nothing changes. If I'm betting on the college team or the college player, either way, the players play on the team, and all the hate's going right to the player anyway. So if you are really for it, and Reed made the argument that if you're really not I think his argument in the chat was that why you can do it, but I forget his whole argument earlier today, which is a tough point for me. I had it in my head before I went on this spiel. But my point is, if you can't half-ass something like this, if you're about player safety, you're about player safety, and that means getting rid of college gambling altogether, which everybody knows you're not going to do.
Come on, there are some small measures that you can take that you can try to protect folks, and it still be somewhat realistic. Like that's so your argument would be. The argument that you're trying to make is that they're not. If you're gonna do it, then go all in and make it to where you can't bet on college sports at all.
Correct.
That's like arguing that if you're gonna go out on the roads, then if somebody gets in basically a car accident, right? Then all of a sudden just shut everything down.
No, it's not the same thing at all. It's not the same thing at all. It's you can stop gambling right now. You can stop it. You can stop collegiate gambling legally speaking. 100%.
But they're not going to do that because there's too much money involved here.
100%.
And that's without question the real truth of this. But you couldn't somewhat sympathize from the standpoint that if they stop that, it might help a little bit. Like something's better than nothing, or you're just like of the mindset that if you can't do it all the way, then don't do it at all.
I'm saying if you're gonna do it half-assed, then don't do it at all. Correct. Because I don't think if you're going to give me the tagline that you care about players and the safety of collegiate athletes, then you get rid of gambling on college altogether. That's what I'm saying. And you won't do it. Because maybe you can make the argument collegiate athletes are taking the brunt of the money on a given sports gambling year. March Madness specifically. Everybody and their brother is gambling on March Madness. Everybody. So, I think this is a half-assed measure. And it does nobody any good. I think.
I can't fall in that. I can't fall in that line. I think that you can do things in certain situations that will help specific, instances of being able to try to deter things. And if it might not stop everything, but it'll at least maybe help significantly. And listen, if you don't think, the other pushback I would have is that, more or less, there are certain ways to kind of figure out if somebody's a little more of a degenerate or not. One of them is what they bet on. Right? If you're betting on spring training baseball games, then you are looking for action, and you might have more of a desire and again, a problem is not the right word to use, right? It's a very sensitive subject, and I am very much pro gambling, but like anything in life, there are limitations to what you can do until it becomes a problem. Anything can be addictive. Drinking coffee, 100%, can be an addictive thing that ultimately could end up becoming a problem if you drink too much of it. Alcohol has been a part of that in our society for a significant long time. Alcohol, another relatively okay example of how there's boundaries around what you can and can't do with alcohol to try to protect those that like to indulge in it that are doing it responsibly. So what you're suggesting is, to a certain extent, is something that I can't get behind, because ultimately our society does this on numerous amounts of subjects, to where you try to protect and you try to limit as many idiots as possible that aren't going to basically be respectful of others. But you can't just ban it for everybody, because if that was the case, if one bad apple ruins the whole bunch, there would quite literally be almost nothing in our society that would work. So that's, again, I know it's not apples to apples comparison, but the highway has speeding limits. Not because the road can't handle a car going faster than the speed limit, is to try to protect bystanders of idiots. So what the government, again, not much of a guy that wants to get on the side of government, but I'm saying what the government's trying to do is they're trying to make sure that they're doing something that would somewhat be restrictive to idiots. And I would think that there's a lot more idiots, and I say that in quotations, because it doesn't mean that if you bet on a college prop player, then you're an idiot. That's not what I'm getting at. But we could also agree that if you're betting on a college prop of a small school in some random place, there's a far better chance of you being somebody that would venture out to say hurtful or threatening things than somebody betting on UC basketball tonight. Is what I'm getting at.
And Reed's point earlier that I was trying to say, I couldn't find the words, but basically, you can't use the logic. If you can't stop it all, why do anything? That was basically his logic. And my argument is you can stop it. You can stop collegiate gambling. If you care about the health and well-being, you can.
But by your definition, see, this is where you've done this 2 times today with the court storming thing.
Correct.
It's like saying that you can stop almost anything. That's like you genuinely can stop almost anything.
Correct.
So my point is that just because you can stop gambling on college sports doesn't mean that you should do it, Bart, largely because you have another issue that you're trying to get rid of. And you're never going to get rid of it totally, but you're trying to limit it as much as possible. Drinking and driving, certainly, right? Everybody can do it. But the reason that the vast majority of us don't do that is because we've as a society realized this has repercussions. It's a bad thing. So I think, again...
But if we can go back to the court storming,
sure,
you do these half-assed punishments where $100,000 fine, and it doesn't work. If you do a half-assed punishment where you can't bet on Victor Locken over 7.5 points and rebounds, it's not going to work.
But at least
half-ass it.
But at least you can admit, though, that if you get rid of that, it definitely takes away the opportunity of him getting the direct blame. Because a player prop is 100% solely on one guy.
Wow.
100%. If it's directly a player, and now I get it if you're going to say the assist and all that obviously relies on other players. But
you say that you can't put it all on one player. I remember specifically, I know we were trolling Elliott, but you and I were both like, John Newman, oh my God, he missed his free throws there at the end. I don't remember what game it was, Texas. That's still going to happen. Like, one specific play is still going to get a player absolutely crushed. I think that in that logic, in that sense, I think Elliott is right. Like, you can't really stop a guy from getting crushed. I think it's a little half-assed to just block all props. But the rule was in place not just for that, but also what Trace is saying. I think, like, 2 things can be right at once. You take care of the illegal part of it, well, not the illegal part, but the one to maybe like shave off a couple points, like not to hit a prop bet, like you get rid of that, and you also are protecting them a little bit. Like, you're not gonna be able to protect them all the way, but you are somewhat curbing
you're half-assing
it. Like,
it. You're half-assing the
yeah,
problem.
I mean,
but by your standard, though, you're saying, okay, do you think that, like, this is where
If my
I didn't see us going in this direction today on Off the Bench, which is fine. This is fun. Maybe it's a more interesting conversation than us talking about somebody tagging somebody. But my point to you is, simply put, do you think that alcohol should be banned completely?
No, it should not.
So that goes directly against the point that you're trying to make now with the college athletics to a certain extent. Like, there should be boundaries and there should be laws put in place when you think that it's a little excessive. It's something that you can kind of eliminate. And you're trying to rein it in a little bit, but you know you can't get rid of it you can't get rid of all of it because the vast majority of people that gamble, the vast majority of them do it responsibly. They do. It's an entertainment factor for them. It's no different than going to the bowling alley.
I'd argue that if you really cared about something, you can do. I mean, like, let's say alcohol. If you're really concerned about alcohol, if you really wanted to stop drunk driving, sure, you could do Prohibition 2.0. You could do it.
Yes.
But that's my point. Like, you're still half-assing it. Just because realistically it's not attainable doesn't mean you're not half-assing something. You could do it a little bit on a surface level to show that you care. So when somebody asks you about it, so you care about the player's safety, right? Well, yeah, we just passed a law that says you can't bet on players specifically in college athletics. So you have the tagline if you're in politics. You've got the line right in front of you. My point is, and by the way, I'd argue that gambling on sports is vastly different from drinking alcohol. Maybe I'm wrong in that. But I think that if you focus on just the safety of players, you can take away college sports gambling right now. You can still bet on NBA. You can still bet on NFL. You can bet on any professional out there.
You're still
amateur betting. You can prohibit amateur gambling. 100% you can.
You've already opened up the floodgates, though. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. It's impossible. It's literally impossible. There's no way in the world now that you've given people the opportunity to bet on college sports that they're not going to be able to bet on them anymore. And if that's the case, I got news for you. The local bookies in town, their business would shoot up 1,000,000,000%.
100%.
So you're not stopping the problem.
Yeah,
correct.
You can only minimize
that's my point.
it, though.
You're not going to stop the problem.
So you're saying
why half-ass it?
So you're saying, okay, just to be clear, I figured out where your take is on this after a little while. You're basically stating to us now that if you can't go all the way, then don't do it at all. They should keep the sports. They should keep the prop betting available for college players.
Correct.
Yeah.
And again, I understand why they did what they did. I get it, truly. I think there was that story in Dayton this past year where kids were getting threatened on their basketball team. I get it. But people are going to gamble on this no matter what you do. And if you're not going to come out outwardly and say no more collegiate gambling, no more of that, then what have we really accomplished here? Because kids are still going to get threatened when some drunk 50-year-old bets on Ohio State money line and their kicker shanks a kick left.
I mean, they're still going to get mad, even if they didn't have money on the game. They're still going to get harassed online.
They were getting death threats. These kickers and these players were getting death threats before gambling was even a thing.
Right.
Like, you have crazy people that.
So we all kind of agree on.
Yeah, I mean, we all agree that it's not right that these guys are getting death threats. But I do think that to your point, the reason that it ended up happening in the first place, Elliot, was because that now the blood's not on their hands, if you want to call it that, from a government standpoint. So if there were something crazy that were to happen with a college player, and it was largely based off the fact that whatever happened to the college player was deemed to be because of the prop bet, now the government in the state of Ohio can clearly say, hey, we did our best to try to make sure that this wasn't something that was possible. All right.
Mouse Cop,
we got through
Mouse Cop says, and I think it's a fair point, college kids are now open to criticism because of NIL. Not to the extent where you're threatening people, but I think that is somewhat fair when you're signing a check, or you're cashing checks for $1.5 million to play college sports. I do think that you're somewhat now in the bed of criticism.
I think that they've always, to be clear, I think that they have always been subjective to where fair criticism. And I think that they will forever they should not be subjected to unfair criticism. And I know that's not a crazy take, but my point is that even when they were on scholarship, they were receiving something.